Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next session in the Munch and Learn series, where we discuss various issues that face small and medium-sized businesses today. So, how does today's topic of the power of first impressions resonate with everybody? I hope we're going to learn a lot, particularly from our friend Ian Lawry, who's going to talk about quality signage in marketing and operations today. So for those that are joining us for the first time, I'd just like to introduce Ian in a moment, but just say hello to Karen, who's our administration. If anybody has any questions they want to put into the chat box, please do that, and Karen can coordinate the questions for me. I think that's all from the Action Coach community, myself and Karen. So I'll move on to say welcome to, I'm very pleased to have Ian Lawry with us. He's the driving force behind Signage Express Oxford, a leading provider of solutions, signage solutions for businesses of all sizes and types in the South and Central region. Ian, welcome, and how do you feel about today's session?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Nick. It's great to be here.
Good stuff. Well, we're looking forward to hearing from you, and I know you deal with a wide range of businesses, so I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about your expertise and how it can apply to our community, which is predominantly small and medium-sized businesses. But before we get into the actual business stuff, I think it's always good to learn a little bit about the person we're talking to. So to start off with, Ian, could you tell us a little bit about where you were sort of born and brought up, and tell me if you want me to move forward on the slides. I'll move that one forward, but tell us in your own words a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I was born in Weymouth in Dorset and grew up across the southwest. So Weymouth, Torquay, Bristol, Cheltenham, all over those areas. And my family owned their own businesses when I was growing up. So I was brought up working in those businesses. So had a sort of small, medium-sized enterprise experience from a very early age. But actually, my parents encouraged me not to go into business, but actually to go off and get a job. So I went off to university, got a degree, which I wasn't actually that keen on studying formally, but
what was it? Does that have interest?
I did a degree in business management and human resource management, which it was a good foundation, but some of the theory doesn't actually relate to anything in practice.
No.
So yeah, that was my sort of early experiences and upbringing, and then we had a family of or I had a family of my own when we were living in Bristol, and children came along, and we decided to move to Oxfordshire to be closer to family for a wider support network. Okay. So that's a bit about my background.
Excellent. And so what were you working, because I know you had a bit of a working career before Signage Express. What did you do before you started Signage Express?
So I was the manager or chief executive of a number of charities.
Right.
So one in Bristol and one in London, and I took those charitable organisations and developed them. So I used my sort of business background to enable those charities to generate what was called unrestricted income. So to generate income that wasn't from like government sources and things like that, which enabled them to spend it on what they needed to spend it on rather than what a funder wanted them to spend it on.
Okay. So a varied experience before you got into the signage signage business.
Yes.
Okay. Well, look. Let's tell us a little bit about the story of how you came to actually set up Signage Express in the Oxford area. I know you moved here because you wanted to get part of a wider family network, but why Signage Express? Why signage? And sort of obviously, I guess you saw Oxfordshire broadly as a good area to do that in.
So if you skip to the next slide, Nick, that's got a few notes on it. So as the manager of a number of organisations, I'd been the buyer of signage. The organisation I went on to run in London had a number of hot desk spaces, and when I took over running the organisation, the occupancy rate was around about 30%, and it was on a busy street in Fulham, and there was no real reason why we shouldn't be at 80, 90, 100% occupancy. But actually, because it was set back from the street, nobody could see it.
Right.
And so one of the first things that I did was to completely overhaul the signage and the entrance and how people access the building so that it was easier for them to do that. So that was signage on railings, signage on walls, pavement signs, a whole host of different things. And what that meant was over the time that I was there, our occupancy rate went from 30% all the way up to about 95%. So that was some of my experience in terms of whilst not running a sign company. But like I said, we'd had children. Our children had reached sort of primary school age, and my wife and I had always wanted to run our own business. So we looked at various opportunities. After discounting many, we came across Signs Express Oxford. It had been trading for about 20 years, and so it had a good customer base. But the previous owner wasn't doing the sort of business development that, and therefore the business that we believed that we could achieve. So we took on Signs Express Oxford, and then we started to really grow and develop it. And we provide signage to startups all the way through to regional businesses, national and international, but the primary focus is around businesses that are based in and around Oxfordshire.
Okay, well that's good to know. It's quite and taking on a sort of a concern. You've almost answered my next question on strategy in what you described in your experience in Fulham. I mean, in terms of business strategy, if a signage package can help take a building occupancy from 30% to into the 90% through primarily through signage, that's a clear example of a strategy. But give me a little bit more on how signage should be part of a business strategy before we get into specific question areas.
So yeah, a little bit like I explained, and as you've just said, if customers don't know you're there, or if their first impression of you is poor because the signage is tired or damaged, or sometimes companies have small businesses have updated their logo, but they might update it onto the website, which is quite quick and easy to do, but they might not necessarily carry that forward into the premises signage or their vehicle graphics. So then when you end up with a vehicle parked outside of a premises that's got two different logos on it, and then you Google them and look at their website and you see a third logo, it starts to show that it's a bit tired and not very joined up. Whereas actually the reverse can be true, that if you've got vehicle graphics with a QR code on it that then takes people through to a website, that can be a part of a seamless purchasing process. So somebody could see that you are, I don't know, let's say a window cleaner. You've got a QR code on your vehicle. They scan the QR code, that takes them through. They might be able to get an online quote for their property, and then they can then book that in. And so it then means that you're not having to have as much staff input. So therefore you can take on more customers and focus your resources on delivery rather than administration. And it just means that you're set up to take advantage of all of those opportunities that are available to you, similar to all the passing trade that we were missing out on in Fulham, that was just walking past the door. And so a number of our customers said, oh, I've walked past this place for the last 2 years and I didn't even know you were here. And then they ended up taking on office space. So it's just thinking about, sometimes it's not always easy for the business owner or the people running the business to take themselves out of the business and think, what do my customers, or what do people that might want to buy my services think of my business, or what do they see when they see my business? Because as somebody who's in the business day in, day out, you might know, well, it's obvious you go into this area, or it's obvious that you go to this part of the website, but for a customer where it's their first part of the purchasing journey, that's not necessarily obvious.
Absolutely, and I think being consistent first impressions are really important, and starting that journey. And I think a lot of business owners need to have an understanding that all their customers in one form or another will go through a journey, whether that's starting off with receiving a piece of direct mail, or finding something on the website, or even a conversation at a networking group. In some way they go through a journey, and signing that journey, whether it's digital or whether it's in the physical world, and doing it consistently is really important. So, okay, I'd like to sort of highlighted today's time in sort of two sort of broad areas, in sort of marketing and operations, and obviously physical signage matters in both of those. But could you just perhaps maybe give us a little bit of your experience on the marketing side of things, how signage can be incorporated into broader marketing campaigns or reinforce that messaging?
Yeah, so if we just briefly skip onto the next slide, which just sort of highlights some of the key sort of products and services that we offer. So that's, health and safety, branded health and safety signage, vehicle graphics, internal signs that could be wayfinding, or it could be improving the aesthetics of the space, wall graphics, and then, as I've mentioned before, external signage in terms of fascias, and then temporary exhibition graphics and things like that. So if we then go on to the next slide, one of the things that do those sort of first impressions count? Well, I think everybody would know the sort of the gut answer, or the gut feel to that, which is that first impressions do count, and although we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, that first stat that says people making it, that first impression within 7 seconds, within that first 7 seconds, a customer has started to make that initial impression as to whether you're a business that they would want to use. Massive 75% of customers enter a business that they've never visited before, simply on its signage. And again, that sort of reinforces what I was saying earlier about the business that I worked with in Fulham. So, and for those people that do have vehicles, there's a massive number of potential customers see those vehicle graphics as they're traveling around. So all of those things help to contribute to, and I'm not as arrogant to think that a business will only be successful if it has signage, because there's so many different channels now. You need to have the website, you need to have the social media, you need to do business development. So it's a broad range of things. But if you don't have that, if your service engineers, or if you turn up in a blank vehicle, then how do people know that you're there working on a neighbour's property, or on a
Absolutely. I think that £3,000, 3,000 times a branded vehicle can be seen per hour. It is a really important statistic, because these companies will pay a lot of money on sort of billboards or whatever to get that type of that level of impressions. Yet actually you can put it on your vehicle and get that consistently around your area of operation.
Exactly. And just one little anecdote, we do vehicle graphics for an oven cleaning company, and a gentleman had his vehicle graphics on for about 12-18 months, and then somebody drove into the side of his vehicle. And on the day that he'd had his vehicle driven into, he rang me up and said, "Oh, I've had an accident. I need the graphics on the side, passenger side door, and the sliding door, replaced. And I said, oh, well, when was the vehicle fixed? And he said, oh no, they only drove into me this morning. It's going to be about 3 or 4 weeks before the vehicle's fixed, but I want you to produce the graphics now so that as soon as it is fixed, we can get them back on. He said, because I generate so much business off of my vehicle graphics. He said, I can pick 2 or 3 customers up from just being on one street doing one person's oven. So that really sort of highlights the power and reinforces that the 3,000 times that a branded vehicle is seen. If they were in a blank van with no name, no telephone number on it, they're not going to get any of those customers.
They're just going to be seen as probably a nuisance.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. And people, people buy from people, and people take trust from other people. So if you know and like your next door neighbors, and you trust their opinion, if they are buying a service from a company, then instantly you think, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Smith know trust this company, so therefore I'd be happy to trust them. So there's that imparting of trust from one group of people to another, from one brand to another.
Excellent. No, good point.
So if we go on to sort of broader marketing side of things, which I've already sort of touched on. So if we go to the next slide, Nick.
Yeah.
Whether you're I guess when you're an SME, it's not always easy to necessarily have, a marketing manager and, and somebody who does all your social media and this, that, and the other. And so therefore, a lot of the time it is the small business owner doing it themselves, or, a member of staff who isn't necessarily specifically trained in that area. But you can look at what larger organizations do, and you can replicate that. You don't have to necessarily have all of those specific roles. So if we look at the Oxford Science Park, what they do is they repeat their logo. So the logo is not just repeated on their signage, but in terms of their marketing literature, in terms of their website. And so again, you've got that consistency of brand, but they do it in their signage, and they are working on ensuring that all of their signage over a period of time reflects their brand around the whole of their site.
Absolutely.
They've got consistent brand colors, so you don't go from one place to another and suddenly see massively contrasting colors. Just simple things like sticking with a consistent font. So whatever font you like, keep it and use it, rather than swapping from one font on your website to another font on your leaflets to another font on your signage. Keep that consistency, and then it reinforces that you are a quality, trustworthy company that knows what they're doing. And then repeating it in different locations. So signage is great, and that can be part of the marketing mix, but along with the 7 seconds to make a decision, there's also a stat which I don't know who it was that coined it, but or found it, but you need to see something in 7 different ways for it to start to sink in. And so if you see a branded vehicle, if you see a company premises, if you see a leaflet come through your front door, if you see a social media post, that's 4 of those touch points that you might need to get a customer to think, oh, I've heard of that company. I might need their services. I'll reach out to them. So again, that repetition, and then also using imagery. Rather than trying to explain everything in words, having some good imagery on vehicles or on your website that help to convey a message quickly as to what you do really helps to ensure that you've got that good marketing and that broader approach.
Okay, that's great. And it's also that repetition from different sources. Once it gets into people's minds, I think it becomes self-reinforcing as well. People almost sort of subconsciously look out for those brand or those logos.
Yeah, and you've then got that sort of trust then, because it's like, oh well, I've seen that before, so therefore I've seen them around. I know that they are a quality, reliable company. I've seen their vehicles several times. There's a thing with online social media that sometimes people have made their decision to buy before they've even clicked onto your website, because they've seen your social media, they've seen Google AdWords, they've seen Google reviews, they've seen all of these different areas. So sometimes a large percentage of the purchasing decision has been made before they even pick up the telephone, before they even reach your website. So then it's just doing the sort of final conversion.
Okay, well, look, thanks for that, Ian. I'd just like to sort of move to a few more sort of operational type questions. If we can, do I need to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, hopefully that will cover that.
Yeah, Nick, we have Marvin. I think he has a question. Marvin, go ahead.
Hi, and because of course I know that quite often people will have these logos on their vehicles and things like that, and some people will just put like a website. Is there anything specific you would recommend to someone to consider while coming up with their vehicle design at all, or do you feel like sometimes a logo and just a website and a number is sufficient?
So it's your call to action. So yes, a logo, and then it depends on where you want to drive people. So if you don't want to receive lots of telephone calls and you've got a website that can do the processing of inquiries for you, then drive them to your website. If you've got a poor website or very little web presence, but actually you've got a team of people in the office that are able to answer the phone and answer technical questions, then you want to drive them to your telephone number. And so it's all about, where do you want customers to enter your customer journey. So it's about understanding that and then highlighting that. If you don't mind, then you can put social media, you can put website, you can put whatever it is that you want, and then it's about making sure that people understand what you do. So if you've got, there was the old telephone network called Orange. If you are Orange, it doesn't necessarily say what you do on the tin. So then it's about making sure customers understand what it is that you do, so that they know whether they would want to engage with your services and follow through on those call to actions.
Excellent. Thank you, Marvin. That's a great question. Thank you. Okay, so do you want to take us through a couple of these more operational issues, Ian?
Yeah, so if we work left to right in terms of the pictures on the screen, so we've already talked about vehicle graphics. This was a project that we worked on for a client that's based in Bicester. They have got they've got two different styles of vehicles. They've got a white vehicle and a grey vehicle, and part of their logo is grey. So we worked with them to on the grey vehicles invert the logo so that it stood out on the grey vehicles, and then the design automatically worked on the white vehicles, and then they had about 11 or 12 vehicles that needed doing, and some of them were out in the field. So we were able to do the fitting of half of the vehicles in our vehicle bay in Didcot. So we don't have to be reliant on the weather. We can just bring the vehicles in and get the graphics fitted. And then the rest of the vehicles were fitted all around the country through our network, because Signs Express is a franchise. It's part of a wider network. So we were able to deliver that for our customer. All the graphics were produced at our centre in Oxfordshire. So you had the consistency of colour, consistency of design, but then they were posted out to the various centres so that the customer didn't have to bring all of the vehicles to Oxfordshire.
Okay. It's fair to say. What's the capacity you can get in a pretty sized large bus coach into your vehicle bay in Didcot, can't you?
Yeah, so it's the door's about 4 meters wide, 4.2 meters high, and the bay is about 14 meters long. So we can have single and double decker coaches, but we can also have multiple vehicles. So if a customer has 5 vehicles that need doing, we could be working on 2 or 3 of those all in one go, again, so that we can get through it as quickly as possible so that they get their fleet back on the road.
It's an impressive setup. I saw it a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you.
Sorry, carry on with the safety at work. That's important.
Yeah, so again, we were talking about the brand consistency. You can have generic health and safety signage, that's fine, but you may need something specific for either specific in terms of size, or you may want your branding on your site safety signage, and that's where we can help a customer by incorporating their branding into any health and safety signs. And we do a lot of work for a range of companies. Air Products is an international company, but we do a number of do the site signage for a number of Oxfordshire-based companies where they've got specific rules around whether it's hard hats, steel toe caps, whether it's about overhead cables, whether it's about where you can use a boom and not use a grab, all of those sorts of things. We can customize that message so that it's tailored to that site, and we can put their logo onto it, so it reinforces that this is their company site, they're responsible for it, and it's their professionalism shining through.
Excellent. And then the final was, is that aimed a bit more at the in-house, aimed at employees, looking at the signage?
Yeah, so this is a wall graphic that's about 6 meters wide by 2.4 meters high, and again, this is a large organization, and they've got a graphic designed around their vision, their customers, and the products they offer, and how they want to deliver that. So it's a really impressive graphic, but actually, again, we've done work for a number of smaller organizations where they've just wanted their logo on a back wall, so that when customers come in or when they're on Zoom meetings, that their branding is shown, and it makes them, in fact, one of the customers we did a logo for, it was only just under 1 meter wide by sort of 0.5 meter high, but he said, I won't feel like a proper company until I've got my logo on the wall. And they've been operating for 3 or 4 years, mainly working from home, because it was an IT based company, or an IT services company, but he didn't feel like he was a proper company until he'd got his logo. So and once he fitted it himself, once we'd supplied it and he put it on the wall, he sent me a picture and he said, now we're official. So, and it was great to see how proud he was of having his logo on the wall. So it doesn't have to be a massive graphic like this, which has been graphic designed. It can be anything from just a simple logo all the way through up to large graphics like this.
Excellent. Well, Ian, is there any more in terms of the slides? No, that was great. Look, Ian, that's been a canter through the range of what you do, but I hope it's given people and people who might watch the recording a sort of fair idea of what you do and the importance of those first impressions. I've got one question that's been sent directly to me, but just, Karen, do we have any other questions that come in if people put it in the chat box? If not,
no, in the chat. Nothing in the chat.
Okay, well, I've just got one last question, which is more about, and you kind of touched on it there with your last story about the IT guy working from home. But what for a lot of small SMEs, obviously they'd like to do signage, but they might be on a tight budget. Have you got any sort of quick recommendations in terms of or how they might sort of talk to you in terms of coming up with a sort of a budget orientated signage package? Is there anything you'd recommend for them to consider, or how to approach it?
So obviously every company differs, and what budget they might have to spend. might vary. So I guess the first thing I would say is reach out to me on social media or through telephone number and email address, and then to say, look, you know, this is where we're at. These are the sorts of, this is what we want to achieve. You know, what sort of budget are we looking at? Or this is how much I've got to spend. What can we do? And you know, whether it's a small company or a large company, what I usually say is, look, this is the sort of thing you can achieve for your budget, but let's prioritize it. And actually, what you might want to do is phase what you spend on your signage. So you might say, you know, if they've got a vehicle out on the road and they're going to client premises, start with that, and then maybe don't do the premises signage, maybe do that next financial year. There's always ways to adjust and to change the specification, the material specification, or whatever, to meet people's budgets. But it comes down to, you know, sometimes it's false economy, and actually you're better to wait and spend your money at a later date on another area. So actually phasing it and going, right, first of all, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do another thing.
That's great. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, look, I think we're more or less up on our time. So, look, thank you for your insights this morning, Ian. That's been great. For those keen on sort of understanding a bit more, obviously they can reach you through the No Limits community by the website or on the Mighty app. But what's the other ways of getting hold of you? Your Signs Express Oxford, is that the best search term?
Yes, so Google us, we come up at the top. We've got lots of great Google reviews, or Oxford at signs-express.co.uk, or call on 01235 81177, or look for Ian Lawry on LinkedIn and reach out to me through direct message. But thanks for having me on today, Nick.
Thank you, and thank you for your insight. That's really helpful. So I'd just like to give everybody a quick reminder that tomorrow lunchtime from 12 to 1, we've got the weekly Q&A live, which is focusing on evaluating return on business investments and business expenses, hosted by Gary Hales. So just like to say thanks once again to Ian Lawry of Signs Express Oxford. Do reach out to him if you have any signage needs. I know you'll get a great service from him and his colleagues. And I'd just like to thank for those attending and for those watching recordings. Thank you, and I will sign off now. So thank you. Thanks a lot, Ian. Have a great day.